Could you imagine getting vendors to pay for your MSP's marketing? Well, you don't need to imagine it. It's real, and it happens every day to MSPs across the world. There's hundreds of millions of dollars available in something called MDF, Marketing Development Funds, and yet very few MSPs are using it to subsidize their marketing. My special guest today runs a fast-growing MSP marketing agency, and she knows the good, the bad, and the ugly about MDF. So if you want to subsidize your marketing, here, right now, are the answers.
Hi, I'm Laura Johns, founder and CEO of the Business Growers, a marketing operations and lead generation company that serves managed services providers.
It's so cool to have you on the podcast finally, Laura. You and I met in real life for the first time, didn't we, at ScaleCon in New Orleans last year, which you've just told me that you only live a couple of hours away from. And we were on the naughty table with Nate Friedman and I think Cassie from Tech Pro Marketing was there as well. And I remember Nate kept whooping and hollering and throwing comments out. It was such fun. I hope that ScaleCon happens again this year. It was. So it was lovely to meet you. And
you as well.
What I want to get you on the show talking about today is, I know is one of your specialist subjects, which is MDF, Marketing Development Funds. And it's something we haven't actually mentioned in the podcast for a number of years, which is crazy because I know that there are tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars sat in vendors' bank accounts, which should actually be in MSP's bank accounts. So
underutilized,
that's what we're going to talk
absolutely.
About. Exactly. So before we talk about that, do you want to just tell us a little bit about you? So what's your kind of journey within the MSP world and how did you get to where you are now?
Sure. Yes. I think that I can officially say I'm the only tech-focused marketing agency in the state of Mississippi. Although we do have a lot of budding tech companies that have come up in the last decade or so, we are not necessarily known for, our technology. So I'm really proud of that. I'm from the Deep South. I've always been in technology, started my career working for a telecommunications company that was embedding cellular technology via AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile inside of an electric meter. So monitoring electricity through cellular, which was really progressive. And again, for Mississippi. So that was my first job out of college. Did graduate school, continued to work there for 10 years, which this day and age I hear is unheard of when you start a new career to stay somewhere for 10 years. But I loved it. And it was, that startup and that culture of startup was really, really a cool experience for me. And then that company actually sold for $100 million in 2014. And once they sold, I went to work for the parent company that was a meter manufacturing company in Washington. Then after that, went to work for a managed services provider. So stayed kind of in the industry and led marketing for them. And really, this MDF was a big part of my story even then. So at the time, the company I worked for was an AT&T reseller. They were reselling connectivity and other things through AT&T. And they were starting a program for partners that allowed them to get, upwards of $10,000 and $15,000 a quarter based off of how much they were selling. And we were a very small, at the time, lean managed services provider business. And so that was my marketing budget, essentially. I was having to figure out how to maximize those dollars so that I could, accomplish my own goals in the business. So from there, though, I went on to start my own marketing agency where after I saw a lot of problems that I was experiencing leading marketing there, tried to find a need for, which was coming around the whole managed services provider business with kind of a turnkey marketing offer so that they could focus on operating the business and then let somebody else handle these long sales cycles and staying on top of opportunities and things like that. So it's been kind of a journey, but all in telecom and all from the state of Mississippi, which has been kind of fun.
That's amazing. That's such a great story. So can you tell us let's assume everyone who's listening to this or watching this on YouTube, let's assume no prior knowledge. So just give us the sort of the 101 on MDF. So what exactly is it? What is it? And what isn't it? I think that's probably a good place to start.
That's perfect. Yes. Marketing development fund. So it looks different with different vendors. So I think that's kind of the first thing to know is that it's not a cut and dry. It's going to depend on their own systems. I do think that some are much better than others. I feel like sometimes it can be a catchphrase that brings people into the vendor, but also gets really complicated in how to use it, which is, I think the statistic, now I don't know, so I don't, nobody, go look this up, but I believe that it's less than 10% utilization for this industry typically of the MDF that's available. I will get that statistic though, if it's true or not, but it's around.
Should we make it real? Should we make it a real stat? Let's just declare it now as a real stat.
This is my professional opinion. But we know for a fact, based on all of our clients that are using it, that they come to us and they say, I know I have MDF with X, Y, and Z vendor, and I've never used it. So then we start digging in and we realize, I think the reason that it's really underutilized is because it's complicated. And it's different for every vendor. So, but essentially it is in most cases and in the good ones, it is based on what you're selling in volume of that vendor, you achieve milestones that allow you to have cash in the bank for promoting their services. And that's kind of a big part of it too, is if you're selling a lot of different things, you have to be really careful in your messaging and your marketing on not making sure that you are service forward. Here's this VoIP, this phone or this, particular vendor that you're using, because then that can complicate the message a little bit. So I think that a lot of businesses, depending on their size, don't really want to lead with that brand. They want to lead with their brand. And that's where I think, again, it gets tricky. But getting compensation on a regular basis for selling more of that product, and the really good programs are doing it well. And it can be very motivating if you have somebody who manages it, which is kind of, become our specialty in supporting our clients and doing that.
Got it. So you seek MDF funding and then manage the relationship with the vendors on behalf of the MSPs. That's one of the things.
Yes, usually that's right. Usually when they come in, we're not going to go a lot of times go through the effort to find new MDF. We have a pretty good idea of, we'll do a vendor. One of the first things we do in onboarding is get a really good understanding of their services and their vendors. And then at that point, we have a good idea of what's worth going after and what's not. And then so I would say probably 2 out of 10 times they're already using it to some capacity, but may not be maximizing it. But yes, we will look at their kind of vendor list. We will start making contacts as their agency if they will allow us. If not, sometimes in some cases, which is understandable, the company has to be the one doing the outreach and making the connection. Yeah. But for the most part, they're really good at kind of handing the reins over to us as their agency. And we're connecting with those marketing teams that are providing the communication and the guidelines around the MDF. And then our account managers are all trained on how to use it and strategy around it. It is strategic. You have to be very strategic, because if you've got 4 vendors that all give you MDF, you have to be giving them, making sure that you're qualifying for getting the money back in your bank account. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So you said earlier that vendors that run a good MDF program, which obviously implies there are vendors that run a bad MDF program. Yes. So I'm going to ask you, just to make my life easy, don't mention the ones that do a bad program.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
But you can name names if they do a good program. But what does a good So again, from the point of view of the MSP, what does a good program look like, and what does a bad program look like?
Yeah, I think just like a sales compensation, especially in this industry, it has to be simple. And if it's, if you confuse the person that's doing your sales, then you're not motivating them. And so I think that the good programs understand that if it's complicated and if it requires, 4 steps in 3 days and, multiple submissions and requirement of certain assets back and forth, that becomes complicated. Also, the bad programs are the ones that give a very, very small amount on the dollar. And I believe the ones that work best, and I am going to say one in particular, and if you look me up, you know that I'm a AT&T ecosystem partner. So our company is an approved marketing partner, which means 100% of the MDF that they give to their resellers is reimbursable with me because I'm an approved partner. Yeah. But their program works well because they have 2 buckets. Essentially, if you sell up to this much, you get $10,000. Every quarter. If you sell up to this threshold, you get $15,000 a quarter. It's not pennies for a dollar. It's not confusing. And if you sell these 2 thresholds, the next quarter you get the money. And so we have been able to build marketing activity around these budgets. And then also give the feedback back to the vendor. Hey, here's what happened with your dollars this year, that's what creates really good relationships that I think the vendors appreciate, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a simple scheme, isn't it? If you sell more, we'll give you more, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I can see the simplicity of that. I can also understand how big corporations would overcomplicate things.
Complicate it. Yep.
Let's say it, Microsoft, right? And I'm not going to ask for a direct experience, but let's be honest. I'm not the greatest fan of Microsoft products, but even for me, obviously I have 365. Even for me as a 365 end user, just getting my invoice every month is so complicated. You have to log into a thing, you have to click this. It seems to generate the invoice and take 60 seconds to do it, and it's like, oh my goodness, if it's like that, what? I know MSPs struggle with it anyway. So I could imagine that Microsoft
if you're busy
has,
too, like they don't have time for that. Yeah,
exactly. And I can imagine they've got a ton of vice presidents all sitting in a room having arm wrestles about my priority. No, my priority, right? And anyway, but so
And I think to speak to that too, you said it, I didn't, but that is one of the ones that is just too much trouble. Yeah. But what I have seen in these programs or these vendors that work really well is even if they're mega, AT&T obviously they're a very big organization. They and a lot of people associate in their minds with AT&T complicated, because that is also a brand that can sometimes. However, they have a dedicated team just to partner resellers, and they have kind of two different divisions. One's a commission based, one's a top line revenue based, but they have these segments that serve a very particular customer with very particular outcomes and goals, and they understand what works for that customer. And I think if you try to take a big company, just for example, like Microsoft, and you try to blanket, a reseller program where we know that every MSP is different and has different, techniques and different systems in the way they sell, then I think that if you're not willing to take the time and invest the resources in finding what they need the most and having a support team around that, then you're not going to really be able to understand their needs and be the voice and be able to provide a program that makes it worth their time.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So I've got two final questions for you. The second question I'm going to ask in a second is as an MSP, how would you get started with this? Before I ask that question, we talked earlier about how these vendors come up with MDF funds. They put the money aside ultimately to sell product, and we all understand that, and no one's got an issue with that. But where there is an issue, as you correctly identified earlier, is where they want you to push a particular kind of router or router, say. And you and I as marketers know that the end business owner or manager that we're trying to sell to doesn't care about the brand of the router. And but if we say to the vendor, hey, we're going to spend your advertising dollar or your marketing dollars, and we're going to do a really cool campaign, which is going to bring on board some new clients, and then we're going to standardize. We're going to put your routers in all of their offices, but we're not going to mention your name. And there's going to be one vice president of sales that rubs their hands and goes, great. And then there'll be a vice president of marketing who says, but that doesn't meet my quarterly quota for brand mentions on Reddit or whatever. How do you is that a case of just working with vendors that get it and just finding that is going to be, I guess, 10-20%, or is there another way of doing that?
I think so. I think, again, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but those successful programs are the ones that understand, hey, my logo doesn't have to be bigger than your logo. I can be a very small part of your overall plan. And if we're doing marketing well as a managed services provider business, we are talking all about outcomes, and we're talking all about our customers' pain points and their frustrations. And you're right, they don't care about the product. I feel like just in general, for another podcast, perhaps we talk about the fact that nobody cares about what you're selling. They just want you to solve their problems. So that's that's another topic. I'm sure you've talked about that plenty. But I think that, again, these programs that get it, they also understand that you have a bigger objective that you're trying to meet. And so, for example, going back to that AT&T, if you put their partner badge on there, which is, small, and they want it a third of the size of yours, or they don't want it, they want you to be at the top, they want them to be at the bottom, those types of things, even working in, some MDF programs are fine with even just like, for example, you're doing an email campaign, the powered by, this particular vendor, or, we're offering a 2-for-1, if you buy connectivity, you get 10 phones free, or whatever. But being able to bundle products that are not both the vendor's product, and be open to the fact that, hey, if they can sell on outcomes and my product gets sold, maybe it's a small mention, but also like, if I'm their vendor of choice, hopefully I trust the MSP enough to know that they're going to sell more, and again, kind of going back to that how can this MDF serve them best so that they're going to be more motivated to sell my product? If you do it well, like a salesperson, incentivize them well, then the nuanced things, I get we need to put a logo on there, but let's not require it to be the whole message, because if we're going to be, wasting time on sending emails about routers, then it's worthless in my opinion anyway.
That makes perfect sense. Final question then, which is where do you get started? So obviously, an agency like yours will do this as part of your client management, but not every MSP can work with you. So is it as simple as you talk to all of your account managers, you just ask the question, or
Yes.
it is? Okay.
I would suggest, spending a day dedicated, or a week, a couple of appointments during the week. You're going to be talking to your account manager anyway. Go ahead and let them know today, hey, on our next call, or let's schedule a call if you don't have a regular routine, depending on how substantial of a part of your business that product or vendor is. Let them know you want to talk if they have MDF funds. Again, I would say you're going to find that a lot of them do. A good way to practice, in my opinion, and of course I'm always smarter, not harder, is they usually, if they got a good program, they can send you the guidelines and the breakdown of what you get for what, and go ahead and put that into your AI tool of choice and compare those programs yourself. Do some prompts about what might bring you the most value at this stage of your business with this many employees and this much revenue. Start to do some of that research and data yourself. Save yourself some time and look at what they're actually offering to see, is this a pennies on the dollar, or is this a lump sum based on my sales growth and what's going to work best for my business? And then figure those out. A lot of times, again, if it's not worth your time, it's not a good program, it's not worth your time, but there are some that are going to be good and substantial. And if you're not taking advantage of it, you're missing opportunities to influx some cash, because you think you don't have a marketing budget, but you might actually have a marketing budget. You just don't know.
I love that. Thank you, Laura. Tell us finally just a little bit about your business, what you do with MSPs, and what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yes, you can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active, sharing lots of opinions. Some you may like, some you may not. And then also, you can look us up at thebusinessgrowers.com. We are, again, marketing operations, doing foundational marketing, getting you visible, digitally visible to your target customers and ideal customers. And then secondarily, we're doing lead generation for you as well once that good foundation is built. And I teach about it all the time. We've got YouTube, of course. If you go to the Business Growers on YouTube, you'll find us as well, and you can learn lots of things there.
For MSPs around the world, the MSP Marketing Podcast with Paul Green.